Viva, you were on the show in May talking about the P. Diddy trial long before we had a verdict, and this was your prediction.
You have this entire blackmail extortion ring. They went and raided Diddy's house. There were cameras there. We know that it involves, the higher ups in the entertainment industry, if not the world of politics as well. And this entire prosecution is reduced to P. Diddy and what we know of his abuse of Cassie and potentially Jane. And then once you flesh out the fact that for whatever the reason, Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter, is still involved as one of this trial. This trial is a show trial because they're going to get him on something. It might just be the, trafficking for prostitution purposes, which seems undeniable. Send him away for 10 years. Maybe he gets out after 8. And then you've successfully covered up the entire extortion ring that P. Diddy was running, much like what they did with Epstein.
Oh, that's very interesting. It really is. And they did just get him on those two trafficking for purposes of prostitution, or crossing transportation for purposes of prostitution. And your reaction to that was what?
Well, I mean, the old expression is even a blind squirrel occasionally finds the nut. But I think I might be getting sufficiently cynical in my middle life age to see how things go dark quickly. And apply all of that mutatis mutandis to the Epstein case. They went after Diddy for sex trafficking to himself only. And they failed in the Epstein case because a jury, I guess, saw through it if the only evidence of sex trafficking was him procuring prostitutes for his own personal pleasure in the freak-offs. But, in the Epstein case... You're
talking about Diddy. They failed in the Diddy case. Keep going.
Yes. In the Epstein case, and Ghislaine Maxwell, they went after them for sex trafficking to nobody. So it failed in the Diddy case, but succeeded in the cover-up. You have the same players involved in all of these sinister blackmail extortion operations, alleged. How the heck Maureen Comey is still involved in this, beyond me. But no, this was, if you want to be cynical and you want to predict the conspiracy, this was the way it's going to go. Diddy is going to now, I don't know, we'll see how many years he gets for the transportation for prostitution, Mann Act violations, and we'll see what he serves of that. But yeah, this is the prosecution was the cover-up, my thought from the beginning.
It's not going to be a lot of time. He appeared in court this week, and the judge, it was 2 minutes, basically said, you defense counsel and you prosecutors submit a joint memo on a sentencing recommendation. The prosecution has been saying 5 to 6 years. The defense has been saying no more than 2. He's going to get credit for the 10 months served. Each day in jail is another day accrued. That will count in his favor. And if it's more than 3 years, I think I'll be shocked. But even 6 years, to me, is a slap on the wrist for what this man's been accused of, Dave. He's now lionized by some. It came out that when he went back to the holding cell where they've been keeping him in the jail, he received some sort of huge applause from the prisoners. They're so proud of him because he beat the most serious rap. And his lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, was saying, I think this is your fate in life, to be the guy who wins. Those guys need to see that someone can win. The official sentence will be imposed on October 3rd. Thoughts on it?
It's very hard to beat the feds. They've got something like a 98% conviction rate. They got lots of built-in advantages. But these are different times where people mistrust government. The institutions are being undermined, and now people just think that government's out to get people. And here you had, I thought, very strong evidence that he did engage in human trafficking with at least Cassie, and yet the jury didn't like that. He was overcharged with the racketeering case. They didn't like that the victim that was supposed to appear did not appear. The prosecutors overpromised in their opening statement. They didn't like that KK, who was Diddy's assistant, who knows where all the bodies are buried, did not testify, was not charged. Where is she? And so I think the jury decided that, you know what, government, we're going to send you a message, and we're going to only convict on the lowest hanging fruit. And I'm with you, Megyn. I think that he deserved more, but in the end, I do think he's going to get a slap on the wrist. The Judge Subramanian just came out with a statement to both parties saying that I want you to pretty much give me a memo about what others in the same situation who are convicted of prostitution and only prostitution will get. Well, if that's the standard, then he's getting very little, if anything.
Yeah, and also he's treating him as though he has no criminal record because his prior crimes didn't require jail time. Like in order to be counted, they have to have resulted in a certain high level of punishment, which never happened to Diddy, which is so perfect. He's gotten away with all of his crimes thus far without getting any serious punishment. And therefore, he'll get away with these without getting any serious punishment. And there's no question to me that they played the race card in this case, that he has enormous privilege. He has the best lawyers. And he went in there and they did a little dance in that courtroom on these jurors who I think got this totally wrong. I just think they completely dropped the ball. And once again, he skates, Viva.
Well, I'm not sure that I think the jury got it wrong based on the evidence that was adduced or provided to them based on the charges. They're charging him with human trafficking, sex trafficking. And yet there are, again, no clients other than his own pleasure. So he's trafficking women for his own personal pleasure, for these freak-offs. It's kind of like a limited hangout, but in terms of a prosecution, like a limited prosecution. We want to charge him with sex trafficking, but we don't want to implicate other potential clients who might be politically connected, I don't know, higher ups in the world. And so we're just going to say he was trafficking them to himself. If that was the standard, and only Cassie and only Jane Doe, if that was the standard, and that was the evidence submitted, I don't blame the jury for saying no to the sex trafficking. The Mann Act violations, like everyone said from the beginning, dead to rights. The only question is what's that going to get him by way of a sentence. So I don't think the jury actually got it entirely wrong in this case, based on the evidence that was presented to them, based on the charges that were brought against Diddy. I just think this was a limited prosecution. Go after him for sex trafficking, but don't implicate anybody else, so that if they get a conviction, they move on. And if they get an acquittal, they move on. And lo and behold, what about the videos that were seized from his mansion? What about the whole camera setup that was sort of a la Jeffrey Epstein in his mansions? Nothing there, all for his personal pleasure? I don't believe it, period. I don't believe it based on evidence prior to the trial, and the trial didn't bring up all the evidence that we knew existed beforehand.
I mean, I don't know. Why would Maureen Comey want to protect the people at a Diddy party to whom they may have been, or he may have been sex trafficking women? I mean, truly, like, what is the theory there, Viva?
If I'm being very cynical, the theory is that there were politically prominent New York figures, media types, media moguls that will get the protection. And so how do you prosecute Diddy without implicating others? How do you prosecute him for sex trafficking without having people to whom he was trafficking for sex? I mean, I could think of very
like
cynical...
the names that we heard just on the speculation, underscoring for the audience at home, these were speculative names, was like Ashton Kutcher. It was like famous actors. This wasn't a case of where it's like Bill Clinton was in there again, right? Like we heard in the Epstein thing. I mean, for all I know, he might have been. But my point is simply, we weren't hearing about heavy Democrat donors attending the white parties that Diddy had in the Hamptons. That one makes less sense to me than the Epstein connections.
Connected wealthy moguls. We're talking about the Diddy parties became the iconic sort of term as Epstein's Island, and people frequented these Diddy parties. I say this is purely speculative, but when you look at what evidence there was when they were seizing or raiding the home, talking about intricate camera setups, cameras in each rooms, potential blackmail, and then they go after him for sex trafficking. Because bear in mind, if they didn't go after him for that, if it was just straight up, sexual assault, sexual abuse, they went after him for RICO sex trafficking. So based on their charges, you presume they had good reason to do it. But if the only evidence they adduced at trial was Cassie and Jane...
Well, but you can sex traffic someone to yourself. I mean, Dave, what they accused Diddy of doing with Cassie and Jane was illegal. The jury didn't buy it. But you can sex traffic someone to yourself. You don't have to be in the business of just pimping out women to third parties.
Absolutely. And all it takes is one time that the woman refuses to consent. All it takes is one time that there's force, fraud, or coercion. And you had that video from the Intercontinental Hotel that was so damning. There was the force right there in front of you. And the defense was very successful in framing that as garden variety domestic violence, saying that this should be treated as domestic violence in state court. This is not a federal crime of human trafficking, not a federal crime of racketeering. And I think the jury bought it, at least in part. Also, didn't help that Cassie had text messages showing that she consented, at least at the beginning, to some of these freak-offs. And the jury, I think, was persuaded that once you consent at the beginning, there are no takebacks. And that's unfortunate, because it's clear to me that she refused to go along with it at some point, and she was the victim of force, fraud, or coercion, and he should have been found guilty of at least that count of human trafficking, which would have required a 10-year mandatory minimum in prison. So, yeah, I do think he got away with it on this one. But, as a jury system, as a prosecutor for the last 12 years, I could tell you that the one thing that is predictable about juries is that they're notoriously unpredictable.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.